So, good evening. We have now proceeded to install our LockPilot 5. And I just wanted to show this real quick on the old style Fleischmann's of what the connection actually looks at the pickup truck. So they're connecting the black wire, which is the ground here, the uninsulated wire wheels on this side, through the chassis block with the screw which holds the pickup actually in place for the wheels with the plus on it. This time I've marked it red and black for easier identification. Let me zoom back out and you can see it better. Kind of difficult to zoom and do everything at the same time. And here on the same side too, we have on this side, now you can see this hopefully, we have this one here is normally the one which grounds this pole to the chassis, and there's a little tiny washer underneath here, a black washer, which insulates this now. So I was able to pick up the chassis side or the minus side through this screw, but it is insulated from the pole which has the gray wire for our motor connection to the LockPilot 5. The right one is the plus side for motor, and then this one here was that spring I was talking about, and I got this fixed. And the problem is in here is the spring has a little hook in it, and that hook was making intermittent contact with the metal behind it. So I got that a little bit shortened and sorted out. We have our red supply for the LockPilot on here, and we just simply have a bridge over for the plus from this side to this side. Then we have on top here our two wires for the two light bulbs for the front light, which is this here, which has gotten the white wire from the LockPilot here, and the black one is simply tied together with this here. Let me see, I gotta zoom back out, sorry. The black one, the minus for the supply, is tied in here, and it is tied in here on these two sides. They go to it. So with this, the engine has full contact from this wheel for plus, these two wheels here, and these two wheels for minus. So we have 3 on this side and 4 on this side, if we can pick up anything through our little traction tire. Otherwise it is 3 wheels one side, 3 wheels the other side. And I got the window fixed. I will show you that in a minute. But let me put this now together, and then we go on and program this. We're going to double check for shorts again, and then we're going to put it on the programming track and get the whole thing on the road. Okay, so now we got this all tacked in here. It's not the most beautiful thing, but I use masking tape because it is more flexible and it is easier on these thin wires. And we got now everything okay. And you can see this on these old locomotives. The normally non-insulated motor pole contact can make contact with the housing, and since we're insulated now, I put a piece of masking tape in here to prevent any contact, and then also here on this side, so we're all clear in every direction with both assemblies, so we're good. I'm gonna leave her open for the moment for the programming, and then we go and see how she's gonna run. Now let me say one word about this. I know some people are perfectionists and they like to use shrink tubing, and they make this all nice and everything. These wires which are on the LockPilot 5, these here, are probably 30 gauge. They're some of the thinnest wires I've ever seen. And I gave it a try, and depending if you got industrial grade or home grade shrink tubing, they will melt the insulation, and then if you have 2 or 3 wires in it, they will make all contact from the heat when you start shrinking this. These are not very robust and not very suitable for shrink tubing or any other type of tubing. You want to give them as much flexibility. This came with the, I think that's an 8-pole connector, 6-pole minus 2, 8-pole connector, 8 wires. It has the 2 extra ones, which we don't need. But that was the one I was able to get. So we have to work with this, what we got. And from my experience, even though it doesn't look very pretty, the masking tape will work the best for this. All right. So we started now to read all of the parameters or CVs out of the E44. She is sitting down here on the floor, and let me see if I can go down here and we can take a look at this. You can see the motor. This is how she responds, and this is basically how she signals. So we have everything pretty well in here, and you can see we got our windows fixed. So that is running now. Then we're gonna do the short test. I'm gonna show this on, I think, CV56. We set that to 0. She should take off for a little distance, and then this will automatically check this, and then we're gonna reread it, and then we can run out. So I got the E44 now completed, and you can see this is the 1968 car, the Trans-European Express, the TEE, with the lights. That was the first early plastic versions they had, with a metal chassis underneath it. That is just tin, and they had just 2 light bulbs and no interior. And this is then, and it was shorter because of the radiuses they used. They made them shorter, and this is the actual later version then from the 1970s, which was full plastic with interior but doesn't have any lighting yet. I just wanted to show you this. Now, this is now the last part of this video, and I started making that last night, the earlier parts you saw, and I'm resuming this. And the reason why was I ran into an issue with the JMRI software I had installed, because I had version 4.12 installed, and the 4.12 went as far as the LockPilot 4, but I installed the LockPilot 5, as you probably know, and we can see this here. That is firmware revision 5.7.151, and they added this now as the boot code date, as the production date. It was May 16, 2023, so it's a little bit less than a year old, but I just bought it. The boot date is from July 7th, and the firmware date, I guess that's when it was put in, or when the firmware was last updated, February 1st, 2023. And LockPilot 5.0 DCC electric. So I put the Loco type in there. And what happened was, I didn't have, when you go up here and you add the new Loco, there was no LockPilot 5s in there or LockSound 5 yet. So what I wound up doing, and it took quite a while, was to uninstall the 4.1 version, or 4.12 JMRI 4.12, and I went to 4.22, which is now running here, and that got us going, because in 4.22 they had added the LockSound 5 and the LockPilot 5. And then because that is the one which is still working with my Arduino Uno and that motor shield I got down there, running on DCC++. So this is probably the latest version I got, where we can where I can run the JMRI and DCC++ on this Arduino Uno. After the newer versions, you have to upgrade this to the newer motor shield and the other version of the Arduino Mega or something like this, to the tune Now I want to show you this. Let me see if we can see the locomotive running. There's a couple issues I ran into, and that is when you start the locomotive. Let me go in the other direction now. Is one of the gears, it has two intermediary gears, as you saw when we so you can see the lights too. The two intermediary gears, and the plastic wheel, which came out pretty clear, is slightly worn out on that shaft that sits on. And what I have to do is it kind of gets stuck when you start the car in this direction, or when you start the train in this direction. Let me show you. What I mean is, if you go to the slower speeds, she jams up. And then even if you stop her and you go to the full speed, the motor cannot overcome. See, it just jumps like this until the motor current gets high enough, and she kind of breaks the motor breaks that stuck intermediary gear free. So I have to fix this, but that's about it. Now we have to keep in mind that this whole thing now is about 68 years apart of when the engine was built around 1955, and the LockPilot was built basically. Here we go. Now we got a little bit slowed down. And I have to do some final adjustments then to the motor settings here in the LockPilot 5. You can see we can go pretty nicely slow, but she will not start yet. It is probably not fully configured. I spent about an hour or so today trying the different settings, because the setup here, when we go to motor, you can see this, you have by far more settings in here with CV parameters you can change, and they all respond differently compared to the LockPilot 4. And so I still have to do that, but I have to come up with a solution for this intermediary gear. The other thing too is the other locomotives, say like after 1958 especially, had 3 intermediary gears, and that makes a difference on how these locomotives actually behave, especially in the lower speed ranges. We have to remember that this locomotive was built about 3 years into Fleischmann starting HO from 1952 on, so the latter part of 1952. So this is 1955, late 1955, so we had about 3 years into this. And you can see this, that kind of gets hung up here, and then the way, I know I actually stopped to, let me go back up. See this, now we're going in the other direction. She runs better because that wheel, or that intermediary gear, doesn't hang up in that direction as much as it does in the other one. So that's how the wear is basically on it. So this locomotive from Angus has seen quite some I would say has seen quite some use. You can see the changing directions, but otherwise I would say she runs great. Like I said, there's 68 years between the manufacture of this locomotive and the LockPilot we have installed, and that this even can be worked like this, so you get to these results here, is already amazing. Well, anyway, this is basically where we are. And just to summarize, this JMRI 4.22 will work with the LockPilot 5. This means it also should work with the LockSound 5. And I would like to thank the fellows over at Midwest Model Railroad for having that in stock, so I didn't have to mail order the LockPilot 5. And it works great. And I would like to thank Fred Model Railroad out there in Overland Park for all of his help. You know, just meeting these nice folks here. And I will make another video because we have two shows, train shows coming up. One over here in early March, the first weekend of March, over in Lawrence, Kansas, from the Lawrence Model Railroad folks. And then one over east in on the east side of Kansas City. And we will report for that, and I will give you the dates if you want to come out here. And with these pictures of our E44 with two Trans-European Express passenger cars, I'm going to say good night.